back to the 1700s to a little village in Rajasthan. It's actually in the Jodhpur province. Rajasthan is a place where you have the one and only desert called the Thar Desert in India. And in this village, a morning, Amrita Devi comes out of her little hut. She just stepped out of the hut. She looked smilingly with happiness all around. She saw huge trees, so many plants, and she could see the black bugs which were prancing around and other birds and other animals. Her favorite, though, was a black bug. And she saw the little black bug going behind the mother bug, hoping to get, maybe she was hungry, she was going behind. And she remembered one day when she was feeding one of her daughters, a little baby black buck was crying. Maybe she had lost her mother. She picked up the buck and she fed the little buck also along with her little baby. She loved them all so much. And she could hear her three daughters inside chatting and laughing and giggling. She just walked straight towards her favorite tree, the Kejri tree. She looked at it with happiness, with love. It was a baby? No, her friend maybe, because she had told so many stories to that tree. No, the tree was her mother, protected her so much. She looked at the tree and she thought that the tree was smiling, and she hugged the tree and kept her face on them. Very peaceful. When she was disturbed by some noise, the birds were all flying as though scared, screeching. The bugs were running here and there. What was happening? She opened her eyes. She looked. There was a group of people were coming on horseback. And as they neared her, she saw they were soldiers. And these soldiers were not carrying weapons. They were carrying a big axe in their hands. Before she could react, why an axe? The entire troop stood before her and said, "Oh, woman, move away. We want to cut this tree." What? Cut my tree? No. The king of Jodhpur is planning to build a palace. For that, he wants the tree. He wants a wood, and we have to cut all these trees. This is the Kejri tree. How can you cut it? It's my tree. I won't allow you to cut it. How dare you? He got out from the horse and he said, How dare you talk like that to a woman? Hearing this, her three daughters had just come out. But by then, Amrita just hugged the tree to herself and said, "No, I won't allow you to cut my tree." The soldier took the axe and just cut the tree along with Amrita. Amrita fell down, her head apart from her body. The three daughters were shocked. They screamed and they understood what was happening. They ran and caught hold of other trees and hugged. And they said, "No, you can't cut our trees." All the villagers came out and said, "No, you cannot cut our trees." And they all went and hugged every tree. But the soldiers, they were in no mood to listen to all this. They cut all the trees along with all the people. It was a massacre. News reached the other villages, and all the people said, "For every tree which is cut, we will have one person martyred." By then the news had reached the ears of the king, and he came on horseback riding fast to see what was happening, and he was shocked to see bodies lying along with the trees down. He got down from the horse bewildered. Why would people sacrifice their life for a tree? And then he saw an old man, tears flowing down his cheeks. He went to that old man and said, "What is happening? What is this?" That old man said, "We are the Bishnoi people. We are the followers of Guru Jambeshwar, who had given us 29 commandments. 20 is Bish and Noi is 9. So that's how we are called Bishnoi. And in that 29 commandments, we have everything he has talked about: hygiene, personal hygiene, social niceties. Along with that, we have commandments of how to take care of the flora and the fauna. So we believe and we follow the teachings of our Guru. We don't allow any tree to be cut, any animal to be destroyed. They are just like our children. You cannot do this to us, to our trees, said this old man. The king of Jodhpur was amazed. He said, henceforth, he declared, henceforth, no flora or fauna of this Bishnoi tribe will be harmed. And this was written in a copper plate, inscribed in a copper plate. To this day, nobody can destroy the flora or fauna of the Bishnoi people.
Thank you, Parvati. That is the first time I've heard that version of the story. I came to it, I think there's a children's book or a book for children, which I obviously realize is now heavily censored because the massacre is omitted and it's put in a much more positive way. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, this actually, just a minute, Roger. This actually, after 200 years, you could find this resonance in the Himalayas when other trees were about to be cut because of the government order they had given to the private people to cut trees. And the villagers, they all did this. They surrounded the trees, and the ladies especially, when the men folk went to the government to plead for that. And they said, no, you cannot cut the trees. And they stood the whole night, not allowing anybody to come near it. It's called the Chipko movement. That is, Chipko is hugging or attached.
But were those people also Bishnoi or not?
No. They are in the Himalayas, yeah.
Yes. So they were doing it out of a concern for the environment also.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that story indeed. And Rona, I've deliberately put you to come next because I think you've also got a tree connection. Is that right in your story?
Yep.
There we go.
Yes, I do.
Very good.
Well, not just a tree, several.
Several trees. Very good. And is there bloodshed?
No.
We'll find out.
There might have been, but I managed. Well, I'll tell you in the story, shall I?
That you certainly will. Over to you, Bill.
I didn't, unfortunately, get to enjoy Fran's webinar, but I did hear a few things about it, and I think it sounded absolutely marvelous. And I was 100% in tune with that whole thing until the 4th of April. Until I went back to my second home in Italy and found there that this message that we receive day and daily now, which had got into my head, which was we must save the environment, we must save the forests. Never for 1 minute did it occur to me that the forests might have decided to fight back. Well, when I got there, I got first-hand evidence that the forest was fighting back. 4th of April, 4 p.m, I put the key in the lock of the door. I had to fight my way to get to the door. First of all, it was as if the Triffids had arrived. Everything was, it was higher than me. And I'm fighting my way through this greenery, spitting all sorts of leaves coming out of my ears, eyes everywhere. And I opened my front door, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. I thought, what on earth? Surely, I mean, it's been 3 years since I was there, almost 2 years and 10 months, I think it is. So I couldn't imagine that there had been any food left that would still be smelly. You know, it would all have disintegrated back to nothing. And then I stood on something, and that something was rather unpleasant. A cheeky little animal had left it. I had been invaded. Now, I left a tiny, tiny gap in my bathroom window, which is 7 feet off the ground. Couldn't imagine what character could possibly have got in there. And then I saw the note on the kitchen table that my friend had left. I'm sorry to tell you, sweetheart, but when I came to check on the house, some sort of animal had got in and created a bit of havoc. I've cleaned up now, so you needn't worry about it. But I don't know what it was. I think it might have been a stone marten, which I had never heard of. But it seems like it's a creature, something like a little stoat. She said, and it did do a little bit of damage. It pulled things out of here and there. But don't worry about it, because I've cleaned it all up now. And I'm looking at this chaos around me. The entire cupboards have been emptied. There's flour, lentils, sugar everywhere. It was all going to have to be thrown out anyway, because it was all going to be 3 years old at least. But I would rather have just picked up the packets and put them in the bin. I didn't sign up for this. It was absolutely horrendous. And the mess, it even had the temerity to use my bath as a toilet. It even had the temerity to get into my bed. I wonder if it decided to have a little nap out of sheer exhaustion before it carried on. I was absolutely horrified. I had never seen anything like this in the 25 years that I've been responsible for being the one that looked after the house. That week that I was going to spend, well, 2 weeks, but the first week I was going to spend just relaxing and writing and going over my stories and having a thoroughly good time, playing international Scrabble with my friends in the evenings. That all went out that little tiny gap in the window that I'd left. I had a whole week of cleaning, scrubbing, washing rugs. Have you ever tried to wash a rug? God forbid that you ever have to. It was awful. And the smell, I just could not get rid of it. Anyway, suffice to say, I no longer feel sorry for those little creatures. I'm no longer worried about the forests. They're fighting back. Trust me. My house was almost enveloped. So I have to say that by the time I left, my house was probably the cleanest it has ever been. So there was that. But when my friend wrote at the end of her little note, and don't worry, I've put a piece of wood up in front of that little bathroom window that the creature must have got in, so it won't be able to get back in. It had got back in. So the question I have to ask myself and her the next time I see her, if I can keep my hands off her scrawny neck, why didn't you just close the window? Thank you.
Well, the moral is clear, isn't it? If we just abandon the earth for 3 years and 10 months, then the problems will all be solved and the forest will come back, animals will come back. Aye. Yeah, I can imagine. I don't even want to go there and what you were putting your foot into, and yeah, certainly not what you were looking forward to for a holiday. Thank you. Not the story that I was expecting, Rona. And I think the dare was on the side of the stone marten. Yes, I think they're kind of, as you say, quite kind of long and
like a stoat in
stoat,
England.
yeah, with a big bushy tail, I think.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I should have told you that I had decided to tell that story instead of the one that I had planned, but I had to share it with you. I've been sharing it with everybody, and it's healing me.
Okay. Uh, Very good. Thank you very much indeed. So now we're going to swing across from UK back to Japan. Hi, Daniela, and it's
Hi.
good to have you back with us. If you missed the games night, we had a wonderful games night not so long ago. And one of the fun games we had to play involved someone speaking in gibberish who was an expert. It happened to be Daniela, who surprised us all with a command of this strange language, in which she was explaining, what was the question? Oh, how best to drink soup? I think that was the question, wasn't it? It was thoroughly delightful. So where did you pick up that hidden talent to speak so well in gibberish?
Oh, that's what I do all the time. Yeah. Since I was little, that's what I've been doing. I only have standard speech occasionally.
Wonderful, wonderful. And remind me again where you are in Japan.
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from Portugal, but I'm an old hand in Japan. I've been here since 2007. I'm in Yamanashi at the moment. I moved a year ago, and I'm an independent scholar. Some people would say a recovering academic and an author and photographer. And the tale I will be sharing with you tonight expresses my interest in stories that address our ongoing sense of isolation from the natural world and from other animals and from our own animal nature in these times of ecological breakdown. And it is based on it is inspired by a recent book of nonfiction that became a bestseller in the country where it was originally published. It was originally published in French. The English version has just come out. And interestingly, it has also received a lot of vitriol. It has received a lot of cynical kind of responses on mass media regarding its truth. And I think these responses are in themselves very revealing of where we are in terms of our relationship to the forest and in its dwellers.
Well,
so,
why don't you tell us the story, and we'll
yeah,
see if we are as divided in our reactions to its truth or not.
Fittingly, it's on a TV show that we first going to meet our best-selling hero in the company of a sleek, swaggering host and his illustrious guests. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our show. Tonight, we have a rather unusual guest, a young misfit who claims to have lived with wild deer for 7 years in a forest. He's here to share our tale with us, which he has just published as a book. But before we hear him, let's move on to our sponsored break. And after the break, we're also going to hear two experts who have expressed some concerns and doubts about the truth of this beautiful, perhaps all too beautiful forest fairy tale. So on my left, we have the president of the National Association of Hunters and Shooters. Good evening, sir. And on my right, we have the Vice President of the Federation of Foresters. Good evening, sir. Well, see you soon after the break. And don't forget, give us our likes on social media because we will be broadcasting live soon from there too. Thank you. What am I doing here? As he was waiting in the TV studio, the young man feels as lost and lonely as he felt on that first day at school, when the call of the forest first whispered in his ear and sowed a small seed of rebellion in his heart. He still remembers sitting at the back of the class, looking outside the window at the birds soaring in the sky and thinking, how lucky you are to enjoy such wild freedom. The young man also remembers himself a few years later alone in his parents' small garden. a decision had been made to take him out of school and have him study by correspondence. And so, without schoolmates, without teachers, his only companions were books about nature and wildlife. And he vividly remembers one particular scene. Dusk was falling and the moon was just rising, and he discovered that the fox had dug a hole under the fence. And so he slipped through and onto a vast field of white clover that was glistening in the moonlight. Owls and nightjars flew over his head, and he was a little afraid at first, but he gathered his wits and decided to follow them through the field, across the field. And lo and behold, soon he was standing at the edge of the forest, of a dark forest, the great unknown. Well, the forest didn't open itself to him at once. In fact, it would take many, many nights for that to happen. And because the forest wanted to test his patience, his devotion, and indeed, the boy showed up. He ventured a little further, a little deeper every night, until a magical encounter opened the door for good. At dawn, as he was plucking a few leaves to chew for breakfast, he felt the forest floor vibrating under his feet. He crouched down, and just a few steps away from him, there it was, standing very still, a magnificent deer. The hairs on its cut bristled, and its big ears just pointed in his direction. And for what felt like many, many hours, they looked at each other in sheer wonder and curiosity. And the boy was utterly enchanted by the deer's black, shining eyes. He felt touched by something stronger, larger than himself. This is the call of the forest. And on the spot, he made a decision that would change his life forever. Fast forward a few years, and the young man was now living full-time with the deer. He had learned all their quirks and personalities. There was Chevy, Star, Hope, Courage, Brock, Poland, and most importantly, from the deer, he had learned to be precise and discerning when picking the fruits of the forest. Indeed, it was thanks to the deer that he was not just living in the forest, but of the forest. If the deer could speak in words, they would have said, "In the forest, there are poisons and medicines side by side. Everything you do is important. Every choice you make here has consequences. Walk carefully, dear friend, in the forest of wonder and danger." As the years went by, the young man would come to witness the deer's births, friendships, partnerships, fights, and inevitably their deaths. Death in the forest comes in many shapes: snakes, foxes, lynxes, wolves, but it also descends like thunder in the shape of hunters, their guns and their hounds. Oh, it would take the young man a long, long time to accept that at these moments, he just had to step back. He couldn't just teach his friends how to run faster, hide, and avoid open, dangerous places. This was not his role. Instead, it was the deer who taught him that death is a loss indeed, but it's not a tragedy, it's not a failure, because no one in nature ever sets up goals that cannot be attained. Only humans do. You can be both sensitive and strong, vigilant and joyful. This is the wisdom of the forest. This is the deer's life force. This is the secret of their happiness. And from the deer, too, the young man would learn the limits of his own strength. After 7 winters in the forest, his health was in such poor state that one day he was lying half-consciously at the foot of an old pine tree. In a haze, he saw a figure, half doe, half woman, approached him. She gently said, "Your forest journey with us has come to an end, and it's not your fate to die among us. Go back to the human world and find a way to tell your story, our story." Suddenly, the young man realizes he's back in the Stevie studio with blinding spotlights on him. The illustrious speakers, the illustrious guests are getting ready to speak. And the young man, too, is ready to listen, to respond, and to stand his ground as his forest friends had taught him. And then, somewhat mysteriously, this feminine, familiar voice inside of him said, "The forest is not a long time ago. It's not in a place far, far away. It is now and here. We are all together, humans and non-humans, in this forest of wonder and danger. Remember this and teach them as best as you can." Thank you.
Thank you. What an unusual story, Daniela. I'm just going to, can I go for a show of hands? I'm going to just switch over to my gallery view so I can see. Okay, so you've heard the story, all right? So are you on the sides of the illustrious guests from the National Hunters and Shooters Association? And I forget what the other one was. Do you think that's a load of nonsense? Can I put your hand up if you think that that story was just a story? It's just a man's silly fantasy about, you know, sneaking out at night and playing hooky? Or hands up, do you think it's a true story and he had that experience and he did live for 7 years with the deer? I see Anabelle and Sheila both willing to commit. Yeah. And what else have I got? Yes, Lily seems, yes, she wants to go. Fran is remaining on the fence, I think. Yeah, okay. Stefania, no, I can't see your hand. Yes, that's up, definitely. How about you, Jem? Are you going to go? Is it a true story? No. Okay, wouldn't happen in Turkey. Thank you. I really enjoyed the idea behind the way that you told the story, Daniela, and it's interesting actually, just the way that you began the story, because we have been talking about, we haven't confirmed it yet, the idea of doing a webinar on this, of telling a story in character as somebody, whether that's a historical personage or whatever. So if we do that, we'll be sure to let you know, because I think you would find that very interesting. Stay tuned possibly for a webinar later in the year. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so Anabelle, I'm glad that you've managed to fix your computer. And yes, you managed to reboot and join us yet again from Buenos Aires. How are things there? We did have a quick kind of worldwide weather update just before we started, and we're sort of having unseasonal heat and cold in places. How are things in Buenos Aires?
Oh, very unseasonable too. We are having a beautiful spring day, which is very strange because we are entering autumn, and until yesterday we were having storms. So, you know, I'm trying to decide whether to wash my clothes now or wait until we have a cold freeze suddenly happening. We don't know. We don't know, but yeah, that's how it is here. And now I'm having a lovely sun entering through my window.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yes, and I'm glad that it's lighting you up. So we are looking forward to your story, please.
Thank you. So before I start, I wonder how important is water for you? how important is water as in drinking water, which I don't have right now in my cup. And how important also is it for you if someone offered you $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion for your water? And this is a little bit of the story that I'm going to tell you, because this is a question that many people asked themselves a few years ago when some companies came to their small towns and offered them 20,000 jobs and new opportunities and perhaps a new hospital and a lot of other things. And actually they were drooling about this offer. You know, they were thinking about the future of their children. And one of these women, Mari, she was really, really looking forward to it. She was a teacher, almost, she was almost about to retire. So she had been in charge of the rural school under her care. And she decided to take a course that the national government through the offices of mining had offered on, the new technologies and the new opportunities that would happen, because that would be the best way for her to prepare her students. So she went to this course and she started reading and learning and reading a lot about specifically the offer of the mining company that had said, okay, so we are arriving here to your small town next to the Andes mountain range, and we are going to look for gold. And here are the 20,000 offers of job offers, and here are all the advantages that you're going to get, local work. This is going to grow. And oh, yes, and we are going to use some very modern methods of mining, not the ones that your forebears 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago had used. Because, oh, no. We are not pre-Columbian. No, we are modern, and we are a company that are looking with very good technology. And we have done this in a lot of times and in many places. So she started reading about the issues that were going on with this. And one of the things that she started noticing was that the word cyanide. But cyanide is a word that I use for rat killers, rat poison. And where is the cyanide going to go into? And she started reading a little bit more in this course and asking a little bit of more questions. And people started telling her, oh, yes, we clean the gold with cyanide and water. We need a lot of water. And she was living in a very dry area in the Andes mountain range. And she started worrying again, because she said, but wait. We need like 750 centimeters cube. I'm sorry, I'm very bad with numbers, even if I'm a teacher, but we need a lot of water, and it's not that much water actually for our people. And you're telling me that we need 750 every day for the town, and you need 1,000? Okay, so the numbers started not adding up, and then she started asking more questions in her course. And one of the things that they told her was that they were doing the modern technique of open mining. And what does it mean? And they told her that that would mean like opening up a whole place, and the earth would be displaced, and lots of chemicals poured there. But we are very aware of how to use them, and we are a serious company. And they came from Canada and from the US, so they knew what they were speaking about. They were modern, and Canada, they defend the nature. So, oh, how interesting. And the government was saying, oh, yes, this is so good. And suddenly she heard the phrase mountaintop removal. And she said, wait. I cannot understand it. What do you mean about mountaintop removal? We have one mountain here. Well, we are actually surrounded by mountains, but we are in our mountain, which is the Famatina. And we don't touch the Famatina. Our forebears, even if we are a mixture of indigenous and white people and, and migrants, we still consider our mountain sacred. And why are you messing up with the Famatina? What does this mean about, oh, no, don't worry. We were just mentioning an example, and she went back to her house and she started wondering. And on that weekend, there was birthday party. Some of the people in the small town were celebrating. It was a celebration of only women, chatting a lot, and not necessarily of very serious things. But Maria was very serious. She was not enjoying, and she was not laughing at the dirty jokes or the rumors about who was hanging out with whom and who was getting the horns or whatever. Oh, no. She was not paying attention to any of that. And someone asked her, and she said, okay, I'm thinking about cyanide. And they asked her why, but what happened? And she started telling them about what was the issue with the Famatina and the mining company and what the government had offered, and cyanide and the water and mountain top removal. And, all of these things, they started resonating. And, they said, okay, but this is very worrying. And the birthday party turned into a phone call party in which, this was 2004. Internet was not happening anywhere, at least not in these areas in Argentina. So what you had was a radio and a phone. And she started calling, and some of her friends started doing a phone tree, calling other people. And, hey, did you know about this? And, hey, did you know about this? Has anyone told you about this? Has anyone hired you yet? You're starting to speak about working at the company. And, things started going on around and blowing and blowing and blowing in terms of worrying. Because what are you going to do with our water, which is very needed? What are you going to do with our mountain? So they decided to meet. Some of them, they decided to just not the birthday party, to meet outside in a square and speak about this issue and speak about what they knew about. And some of them said, hey, I know people in the South that 2 years ago had a similar problem and they are fighting against it. And I know people in the next province that are having this situation right now with a mining company, and they're not so happy. And, why don't I call them? Or why don't I, take a car and drive 5 hours to visit them and ask about it? So they did that. Some of them took a car and rode around the mountainous roads of the Andean mountain range. And some of them took a phone call, which was not the best because the connection broke all the time, but they asked some other people that they knew about on this. And then suddenly Famatina became a word that everyone was speaking about. Famatina and open air mining, and Famatina and the water, Famatina and the water, Famatina everywhere in the schools. Not only in the schools, people were teaching about this and telling the kids, and the kids then they would run to their houses and tell about this, but also in other places, the local radio, which is one of the best ways in which you can find out news, especially before internet. And, you started having all of these running around. And some students and some organizations, they said, okay, but what can we do about it besides, informing about this and worrying about this and asking about the government? Well, we can go and, just speak to the mayor. And the mayor said, oh, yes, I am very worried about the Famatina and the water. But, actually, they were seeing him very happy with his new car. So I'm not sure if he was so worried. And so they started asking the legislators, not only the local legislators, but the city legislature, which were far away, but they went to the city. And they said, okay, they're not paying attention to us because they did not pay attention to them. So they got inspired again on what happened in the South, in Esquel. And the people in Famatina said, okay, we are doing some things. We're taking some decisions. And one of the things that they did was cut the road, which is very illegal. But since the year 1999, 2000s here in Argentina, cutting a road was one way of bringing news. and having newscasters doing something like what Daniela did recently, and showing and telling everyone, the world, what was going on. But they did not bring that many newscasters. They brought the police and some armed forces, and people started getting angry because each time Famatina was repressed in the words, they became more and more convinced that they had to bring it up more and more and more and more. And that's how El Famatina no se toca became a slogan. You don't touch Famatina. And they started reaching out to other social organizations, and they started marching. They were 10 people at first, and then 30, and then 50, and then 60. And the population was actually quite small, so they might have reached 1,000, and it was like, whoa, this is the most we have seen here. But then you started having people from other villages joining them. And they again asked their neighbors in the south, very much in the south, in Patagonia, in Esquel, what they had done. Because 2 years earlier, in the south, the people also had a mining company coming from Canada, Switzerland, and the US, very serious people. The Swiss, they are serious. They are very, very aware of the rules. They don't do anything in Europe, but they can do that in South America because the governments open up their arms and their legs for them. So you had that issue there. And the people in Esquel, these other people, the ones that became inspiration for the people in Famatina, they started again the same thing. They started moving and protesting and marching, and eventually they forced the government to ask them legally what was their opinion regarding having a mining company there. And in the year 2002 and 2003, after all of the movement in Esquel, in the south, in Patagonia, the government said, okay, we're going to have an open question for you, like a referendum, which was not very known, even if we are a democratic country, not very known here. And 81% of the population voted no to the mine and no to the mining. And the government actually had said that this referendum was not necessarily binding, but after 81% of the vote saying no, okay, they had to agree that they had to do it. So Esquel inspired Famatina. And Famatina was able to throw out, through perseverance and political persecution, and sometimes the government cutting funding, because most of the people working there were depending on the state, on national help, and sometimes they got cut funds. They were able to throw out 4 different mining companies that attempted to enter Famatina, from Switzerland also, from Canada, from the US, from China, and also one even from Argentina. And every time the local governments try, either in Esquel in the south or in Famatina in the north, to do their own business, they never expect the social reaction. And there are social reactions. And actually, I might tell you a secret. Last year, there was an uprising in Chubut, in the province on the south in which Esquel is, because the government had decided to not pay attention to these 20 years of fighting. And they had had a law on a mining zone available for some companies, and they had new cars in the meantime and, new pockets, fatter pockets. And you know what? People said no, but in this case, they did not vote. They actually almost burned the city government. So after that, which I'm not promoting that, I'm not saying take a torch, just in case, feast has no, it's no legal consequences here. Let me tell you, I'm just sharing a tip, or some bit of, gossip. But the thing is that, yeah, every time they try to touch the Famatina, or every time they touch Esquel, people remember. And they are still fighting nowadays. So if you don't mind, I will show you some pictures, because it's very difficult to tell a story without the real context of what's going on. And with this, I will end my story. So this is a little bit of South America. I'm going to go a little bit farther away. And this is Famatina, and Esquel is around here. So you have a little bit of a difference in locations. And in Famatina, I'm sorry, I was trying to look this. These were the first people that started saying, hey, I'm worried about mostly women, although you can see many men here in the pictures. And these were the first people that were saying, you don't touch Famatina. And they started cutting roots and doing this and having every day someone standing there watch to see if a car was passing through, to let the other people know, so they would call the law, even if the law sometimes was in favor of the mining companies, but they would be having like pictures of this, this van should not be passing through here. What's going on? Or they would stop them and ask them, what are you doing here? What's your paper? And people in all the country started saying, Famatina no se toca, you don't touch Famatina. And in Esquel, 2 years earlier, this is what inspired the people. And not only inspired the people, you would have sometimes very small protests, but even a teacher started having a song, different songs on this, teaching them to their students. So this is a CD on songs about resistance and fight against the Famatina. So you not only have to march about it, and you have painters that have painted this, and you have web pages now that connect them, and it's a union of community assemblies that are aware of what is going on, and they try to fight against this. Of course, they have other allies and many political leanings, but in the meantime, this is one way in which some people became many. Thank you.
Anabelle, thank you so much. I think when it comes time to write the manual on civil disobedience or storytelling, there we are. We were thinking about social justice. Actually, this is another possible theme that we're considering for a session. Would be telling stories in connection with the idea of social justice. And what you've
we have a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Your name did come up. I said I imagine that Argentina is a place where they are very familiar with this as a course of action, and it's great, isn't it? The power of education and how one person can actually throw a stone into the pool, and those ripples start to spread. And I think that's when we're thinking in terms of daring. It's really sometimes it is being willing to at least just raise your voice, and then, as you say, one can become many. So thank you for that story. Very
Roger, Anabelle, can I share something with you? Can I share?
Yes, briefly, Jem, because
Yes.
we've got other people to come through. I will give you
in my background, I put in a land where this Canadian company came to us in 2009, and they ruined all the mountains, which is in the south part of Turkey. And only last year we can kick them out, like Anabelle explained in the same way.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad Selena isn't with us today. Otherwise, she would be feeling the heat as Canada's.
Oh no, poor Selena! It's not the idea. It's not the idea to attack Canadians particularly, but just to speak about these companies that are, protected in their very righteous countries.
Sure. Thank you. Well, let's now move, and as we are thinking of, you were talking really there, Anabelle, about educating people. Hi, Beverly. It's good to have you back with us. Okay. And I think we have another sort of STEM-related story. Okay.
Yes,
we remember
do.
your last one. So please,
thank you.
Over to you.
Yes. And it's an honor to follow such a powerful environmental story. Thank you. It was a cold spring day in Southampton, Long Island. I was driving on the road and it was foggy and could hardly see. The day before, my teacher had given us an assignment. This coming Saturday is going to be the very first Earth Day celebration in the world. It was 1970 in the month of April. I need all of you to get a story that has something to do with our environment and helping it improve. After class, I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do. She said, I have a friend, an old fisherman. I'm going to give you the keys to my car. Go tomorrow morning and he will tell you a story you can share on the first Earth Day celebration. So here I am driving. I had this funny feeling in my stomach saying, oh no, where am I going? She said, look at the very end of the highway, you'll see a sign that says Montauk Point. That's the last point of land until the ocean, and you will see the ocean behind you. Go on the dock and find a hut. That's where my friend will be. So I parked the car when I got to the end of the highway, got out and started walking on this deck with the fog coming in, the dock. And, there was some boards missing. I was afraid my foot would fall in. And all of a sudden I'm walking down and I see dark smoke coming out of a pipe of a very old hut that looked like it was going to collapse at any moment. I walked to the door and I knocked gently saying, well, maybe no one will hear from me and I can get out of here very fast. But no, the door swung open and there in front of me was this old man with weathered, wrinkled face, suspenders holding up his long pants and a flannel shirt. Come in, my dear. I've been waiting for you. And behind him, there was a light bulb from the wind and a chain swinging back and forth. And there was also a string of tape with all these insects and flies that had been caught in his hut. Ugh. And he said, sit down, my dear. I quickly looked around. There was the potbelly sofa that smoke was coming from out the pipe, a little sink with some shelves of food and other utensils, and a single bed. That was it. There was things on the wall, but I couldn't make them out because he was saying, come on, sit down. And I sat down and he brought over an old chip mug with tea in it. He goes, here, it's a cold day. You'll probably need something hot. Well, I used it to warm my hands. I didn't want to drink it. Then he reached forward and said, my dear, I have a story for you. And I want you to listen carefully. So I started listening. My dear, when I was young, I was nothing for schooling. I didn't like it. And I'd skip school all the time and meet the fishermen at the docks with their ships. They would clean up here and stay a while. Then they went to Europe. And on the way, they would know where the fisheries were because their fathers taught them that. They were all fishermen, their families. And they would gather their fish and go to Ireland and then England and down to Germany and Spain and France, and then come back and fish and get all their money and come back here for the winter. Well, they were teaching me all these things of how to be a fisherman and fix the boats and do the nets. And one summer they said, my son, you seem to be getting older now. Would you like to make a trip with us? Get your mother's permission first. Well, we're going to go tomorrow. Well, I showed up that day, tomorrow. Never told my mother, said I got permission, and off I went. And that was the start of my life career as a fisherman. The seas were beautiful, clean. We told stories. We fished for our own food. And then we would get to the coast of Europe and we'd go from fishery to fishery. And there was thousands of fish, but we only took what we knew we could sell and not any more. And we'd go from port to port. And at the ports, we also enjoyed having day trips, or we would stay a couple days just to enjoy the area. But there was a problem, 2 problems that were happening. And it made me so mad and sick to my stomach. At first, it was just an old net somebody had thrown out of their fishing boat. And then I started seeing some plastics, and then animals were getting caught in the nets and they would lay there rotting. And it got bigger and bigger and the stench got worse and worse. And as we got to the areas You could smell the stench before you even saw all the pollution that was in now the water. The other problem was the fisheries. We'd go to the fisheries that our grandfathers had fished for numerous years, and they were getting less and less, and some even started disappearing. I was so upset. How could people do this to our oceans, our precious oceans that feed the people and our animals should be safe in? So what I did was I decided I would do something. At every port, I would find the mayor or the local pub or the college or the lawmakers or the kings or the queens, anybody who would let me talk to them as a group. And I told them what was happening, and we discussed the ideas of either cleanup of things or not overfishing or stopping the pollution and telling people that it's what it's doing to the world. And I made a difference. Come, my dear, let me show you something. Where was he going to take me in this hut? And he led me over to the potbelly stove. Do you see that picture on the wall? That was in London. I got invited to the castle of the Queen. And look at that. They gave me a medal for all the stuff I was doing in Europe. And I looked and I said, I think that's the Queen of England, but I didn't want to say anything. And then we toured around the whole hut of all the pictures of all the places he had been, all the awards. He had certificates on the wall. He had medals on the wall. He had pictures. And he was so proud of himself. Come, my dear, the fog's coming heavier now. There's a storm coming in. I want to get you back to the college safe. Sit down. I have a question to ask you. Okay. So then he comes real close. He had a long gray beard that constantly he was pulling. My question is this. I'm an old man now. I need someone to carry on my legacy. Teachers make good teachers of their community as well as their students. I need a promise that when you become a teacher, the month of April on Earth Day, which hopefully will happen every single year from now on, is taught about the pollutions of the oceans and the lack of fisheries because people are overfishing. I was only 19 years old and a freshman in college. I thought I'd be a teacher, but I didn't know for sure. So I knew it would make the old fisherman happy. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to. No, he says. I jumped. I don't think that's a sincere promise. I want one from your heart that you know that until the day you stop teaching, you're going to carry on my legacy. And we sat there in silence. It seemed like an eternity. I thought, well, I think I could do this and really make a difference. And then I leaned forward to him. I give you my promise to carry out your legacy. That's what I really wanted to hear, he said. Go, my dear, hurry up. The fog is coming in and there's going to be a storm. So he went to the door and I gave him a hug. Oh, you smell fishy, because everyone tells me that. And I started walking up the dock towards the sign, Montauk Point. And I looked behind and he was outside and he went like this. And I went and I left. And that Saturday, I told the story, but it did not end there. I did become a teacher, an elementary teacher and principal. And every April, I kept my promise. We would invite parents in. We wrote books and made murals and went around the school. I called the newspaper or the TV and had them come in and film the kids talking about the pollution problem and the fishery problem. We went down to the mayor's office. We had a play and invited all the politicians in. We had the next door college. We went to the college and did it for the students. And we went down to the New York State Museum and had displays and plays and talks to anybody who would listen to us the day that we went. We made a difference. And every year, it's carried on in that school. My legacy. It was now not the old man's legacy, but after 35 years of in teaching and I retired, I had created my own legacy. And now I'm asking all of you to help me carry on this legacy so that the oceans of the world will get less polluted and the fisheries will come back like thousands of years. They had always been there. And the one good thing that did happen, because hopefully of me and my children and community, was engineers built these huge boats with the holes in them. And they gathered up in this one bad area that was horrendous of pollution in the oceans. And they would take all the stuff, suck it in, and then they built a factory nearby on land. And they brought all this polluted stuff found in the oceans. They took out the stuff that could be recycled and made other things out of the plastic, and then disposed of the stuff that correctly so that it would not be going back into the ocean. And it was so successful. They're building now fleets to go into different parts of our oceans to try to clean it up that way and recycle whatever they can. So if you take anything from what I've just told you, pass this word around. Carry out the old fisherman in the seas legacy and my legacy. And remember, one person can make a difference in the world. And he certainly did, the fisherman in the sea. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Beverly. I really enjoyed that. I hope that's sincere enough for you. I just love the way that you created this kind of, call me Ahab character there speaking to you and his story. And I love the way that you presented that to us. And it's amazing to hear how you, from that age at 19 and then taking that into your career in school. And I'm sure you have no idea of the sheer number of people that you have influenced, the kids who've grown up and gone on. Just actually, 2 days ago, I actually spent 5 months in a school in near Poughkeepsie, Millbrook School.
Oh, that's right near my house.
Okay, well, it's the 50th reunion next week. I won't be there, but we've been online sharing, and there's one guy he has he runs a company that does this carbon offset is what he's doing, and apparently he's one of the biggest in the country in terms of the amount of carbon offset that he is creating for in terms of I guess fuel or trees and so on, and it's just extraordinary to think that somebody who graduated with me in 1971 has gone on and done this and made that his life's work. So it's possible that people can find their calling and can make a very significant contribution. And on behalf of us all, I thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thanks, Beverly. Well, now we're going across to, well, I was going to say we were going to Meher, but she has said no, she is not going to appear today as herself, but in a new guise. She is going to metamorphose into Lalang Singh. So, and I see indeed her name has changed completely. Does this mean, Sheila, she should have a new membership fee? I sense there's an opportunity here. We'll have to discuss this as a new category of membership. But ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome Lalang Singh?
यूं ही चला चल रही, यूं ही चला चल रही, यूं ही चला चल रही, चलिया। नमस्ते, राम राम, कैसे हैं आप सब? मैं ललन सिंह सोमपुर गांव का वासी हूँ। ओह सॉरी, I forgot. I have to talk in English, but sorry, my English not very good. Please forgive. Please, I say sorry if I make mistakes. I am Lalang Singh. I come from a village Sompur. I had gone to neighbor village to shop for my wife. Uh, I tell her, why you make me walk 18 kilometer to neighbor village to buy only haldi powder, dhania powder, jeera powder. We get in our village also. But she say, no, nothing doing. I want fresh ground haldi powder, dhania powder, jeera powder, mirchi. What do we call in English all these things? Mm, spices. She tell me, go to Vimla Kaki in other village, 18 kilometer away, and get fresh ground spices. I show you. One speciality of Vimla Kaki, she packs only in paper, no plastic. This is haldi powder. Mm. And this is uh, dhania powder. I think it is called coriander. I go walking so far, and then because my village still far, I rest under this huge, big bargad ka ped. You all know what is bargad ka ped, no? My daughter taught me in Corona time all English words, but I keep forgetting. Can someone from the audience tell me what is Bargat ka ped? It starts with ba only. Please, can someone help me? It is called ban banyan tree. Ha, banyan tree. So I sit under this huge banyan tree to get some shade on this hot summer day. Banyan tree shade, best. It gives me, makes me feel cool. And I take these spices back to my wife. I tell you one secret, especially to all the men in the meeting. Do you know, happy wife is equal to happy life. So I travel. So what? I travel on foot for 2-3 kilometer one way. Thanks to this banyan tree. But I don't understand one thing. This huge banyan tree, why does it have such small, tiny fruits? In my garden, near my house, small plants like creepers, they have such big, fat kaddu, pumpkin, such big kaddu, small, thin creepers, trees, big kaddu, big pumpkin, and such a big, huge banyan tree, such small fruits. All ulta pulta, no? Even nature makes mistakes. See, big tree should have big fruit. Small tree, small plant should have small fruit. Nature made a big mistake. Now I will rest for some time. I have a long walk. And I will see you in a few minutes. What happened? ये क्या हुआ? अभी तो इतनी तेज धूप थी, और अचानक इतनी तूफानी हवा. Just now, so bright, hot sun, and now seems like a storm. These fruits fell on me, and I got up. But just think, what if these fruits were as big as pumpkins? They would have hurt me, broken my head, damaged me, and I was blaming Mother Nature. Maaf karna. I'm sorry, Mother Nature. I'm really sorry. You are ever intelligent. ये प्रकृति जो आपकी रचना है सर्वबुद्धिमान है, सर्वश्रेष्ठ है. मुझे क्षमा करें कि मैंने आप पर संदेह किया. I say sorry because I said you made mistake, but you are always intelligent, most intelligent. I will not make this mistake again. I must go now. Thank you, Sheila ji, Krupa ji, Roger ji, for inviting me on Feast Stories. I invite all of you to come to my village for a feast, feast of Swadisht Khana, yummy food. Ram Ram.
Well, thank you very much, Lalan Singh. Nice to see you and to hear your story. I think Nasruddin would like to have a word with you about that. He had a very similar experience. I could see Jem smiling to himself there as you were telling that story. So, okay, you're back now. Can I speak to you? Do I speak to you as Lalang or as Meher?
I think we'll go as Meher now, Roger.
Okay, very good. Okay. And what gave you the idea to tell the story this way?
I don't know. I just enjoy telling stories in first person and
Okay.
in a monologue style. So wherever I see there's a single character in the story, and it's the character can speak about the major conflicts. So I try adapting it and doing it in first person as much as possible. I enjoy doing this.
Very good. Well, thank you. That was a real surprise. I enjoyed
Thank
that.
you.
And nice, because we've had quite a lot of serious stories, and appropriately so. Thanking you for lightening the mood, indeed. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Good,
you.
good. Well, I think we've probably got time for, is Krupa still with us? I'm sure you were connecting when Anabelle was talking about water and the importance of water. Given your recent work on the video about Singapore and the eco tales that you shared at NSN, because here in Singapore, water is a huge, huge, huge thing for us, because until relatively recently, we've had to import so much in. So I'm glad you are here now to share with us a story. So do you want to go straight into that?
Sure. Thank you, Roger. Let me get the tyrant out of the room. Thank
you. Yes, yes. She is not speaking to her husband, I hope.
Okay. I'm so glad my husband is out of the room for this story. So let me begin. In 2014, till 2014, I was a hypocrite. If you ask my husband, he probably will say that I'm still a hypocrite. Why? Well, I grew up in many countries, but finally in Chennai, in a fancy schmancy school that I went to that had a boring curriculum that hadn't changed in the last 10 years. And every year they taught us the life cycle, earth, eco, reuse, recycle, reduce. And every time we just drew the blue-green planet, and then we had a bunch of arrows, and that was it. We were eco warriors. And so up till 2014, the year I got married, I thought I was doing my best. because I was talking about recycling, I was talking about reducing. I did it all. I got married. In the first week, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law chose to walk to the market. They could afford a car, but they don't own one. They still don't. They had an old scooter, but if they could walk to a market nearby, they would walk. Now, this is me, the girl born with a silver spoon. Why? So that day, they came back from the market with all the vegetables in an old yellow cloth bag. Old yellow cloth bag. They don't have any taste, I thought to myself. It was stained at the bottom, and as soon as they came home, my mother-in-law opened it up in the kitchen floor, and all the vegetables came rolling out, mixed. The coriander, the tomatoes, the onions, the potatoes. And I thought, so uneducated. Why didn't she get these plastic bags and organize them and put it into the bag, And then I looked at the vegetables, and they were all knobbly and old, and some of them were even squished. So I looked at her and I asked, yeah, ma, why did you get this? Oh, idudama cheapa irukum. So cheapo. She can't afford it. And then she had an afterthought, and she said, Krupa, idudha nammala rusiya irukum. These are the tastiest, Now, internally, I rolled my eyes and I shut my mouth, because in a week, I would be moving to Singapore, and then I didn't have to look at these ugly vegetables or that ugly little cloth bag. But my mother-in-law had the wisdom of another woman called Isabella Soares. In 2013, same year that I got married, Isabella found this problem when she was speaking to her uncle, a farmer. Now, Isabella was an environmental engineer, and she was shocked to know that 40% of her uncle's farm produce went to waste. And then, being the engineer that she was, I'm an engineer too. She was smarter than me. She did her research. And then she got to know that 1.3 billion tons of food that was produced in all those fancy schmancy countries, like Anabelle told us before, was going to waste. Do you know how much 1.3 billion tons of food can be used for? It can be used to feed 820 billion people. And this isn't even counting the food waste that happens in countries like ours, Asia. So that Christmas, Isabella thought to herself, okay, I'm going to solve that problem. She quit her job, cushy, well-paying environmental engineer job, and she moved back to her home in Portugal. And then Isabella said, well, I'm going to take these ugly fruits and sell them. Ugly fruits and so she made a store called Fruta Fea. And I hope I pronounced that Spanish right. Now, Fruta Fea was just an idea. She had to raise money. So, of course, she went to the government, she participated in a contest, and she got 15,000 euros. It's a lot, but it wasn't enough. But she didn't stop. She raised the rest of the money with crowdfunding, another 5,000 euros. And now, with 20,000 euros in her hand, Isabella went and brought herself a bright yellow van. And on its side, it said very clearly, Fruta Fea. What does it mean, you wonder? Ugly fruits, straight to the point. Now, Isabella took that yellow van of hers and went across the countryside, one farmer at a time. Can you sell me your ugly fruit? She asked. Was she from the government? Were they selling her to check the produce? One farmer even asked Isabella to run out of her farm. For 20 years, the government has told me, the supermarkets have told me, that I can sell only perfect red fruit. Well, he was selling apples. And Isabella said, no, I really need your fruit. I'm going to sell your ugly fruit. So she convinced 10 farmers. And then, well, now she had the fruit, but who was going to buy that ugly fruit? Not a snob like me. So she hoped and prayed, and she sent out an email to the 50 friends that she knew, and she said, well, I'm starting something like this. I'm selling ugly fruit. Would you like to buy? Now, to her surprise, all 50 responded. And what was Isabella to do? It was simple. I will give you a crate of fruit every week for £5, subscription model, very smart engineer. And all you have to do is nothing. It gets delivered to your doorstep. Now, Isabella was a single woman, and now she had plenty of fruit coming in. How was she going to deliver it all by herself? She had a yellow van. So Isabella asked volunteers in her neighborhood to come in just to pack the fruit. And they did. They came in droves. The promise? Just a crate of fruit to take home. Now the farmers were more than happy to send away their ugly fruit, because otherwise the fruit was left to rot. Yes, some were sent to sauce companies and jam companies, but the cost of transporting fruit to sauce companies and jam companies was so high that they would rather let it rot. Rotting makes methane, and methane, global warming. We know what happens. So the journey doesn't end there, does it? Halfway through this journey, her yellow van caught fire. Yes. And that's it. Single woman, single van, company close. No, company didn't close. In fact, every single farmer, every single volunteer, and every single person that bought fruit from Isabella put in their own money and bought her a new van. Now, Isabella owns, I don't know how many vans she owns. I'm very bad with numbers, worse than Anabelle. She has 11 locations and 5,500 customers and 213 farmers to her credit. And they save 1.5, let me check, 15 tons of fruit. So, 2021, I might still be a hypocrite, but not in the same way. Over these last 8-9 years, I've realized the wisdom of my mother-in-law, the humbleness of my father-in-law. And though I might not be as great as them, I make small steps. So maybe I'm just a work in progress.
Very nice. Thank you. And what a beautiful story about ugly fruit. Okay. Yes, I think she would have a challenge here in Singapore, wouldn't she? Because we tend to be rather snobbish about that. But I think that's a great idea. And I'm sure the amount of stuff that people throw away, which doesn't need to be thrown away, or turn their noses up at, which are perfectly fit to use or whatever, is quite scandalous. So thank you for sharing that and being so brutally honest about yourself, Krupa, okay, and sharing that story. I hope that really, I think we've succeeded beyond our wildest dreams in terms of the kinds of stories that we have heard this evening. Certainly not what perhaps we had originally expected when we kind of very glibly said, oh yes, we'll follow Fran's webinar with an eco story swap. So thank you very much, everybody who has shared those stories and brought something very special to the table. Yes, hi, Fran.
Hi, I wanted to say these are wonderful stories, but please don't think that they can only be told for Earth Day or for environmental things. You would be preaching to the choir, as the saying goes. Tell these stories everywhere. I mean, the stories about the tree huggers, the stories about the people fighting against the mines in Argentina, those are hero stories, and they need to be told everywhere. And the stories about learning how to deal with ugly fruit, that's a personal story. You know, they fit everywhere and they need to be told all the time. Thank you so much for inviting me to come listen, and I really enjoyed this session very much.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's a very important reminder. I didn't say, but I myself have shared the tree hugger story on the Padang here in Singapore, a kind of iconic open space at the heart of the city. And in my version, I did it with a couple of deaf partners, so we did it as a tandem version. And when the children, or I'm trying to remember the name of the heroine in the story, but when they hug the tree, what we did was we got the parents to come up and to be the trees, and then we got the kids in the audience to hug the trees, which was their parents. It was a kind of a communal celebration. So we made it very kind of interactive, and we had great fun. I think quite a lot of dads then, in our story, there was in my version of the story, there was a big storm, a sandstorm came through, which was why they valued the trees so much, because the trees provided protection and were holding back the desert, if you like, because as Parvathy said, Rajasthan is a very, very dry area because of the Thar Desert. So thank you for joining us. Can we give all those tellers who shared stories today? Goodness me, Maya, you've lost your mustache. I must say it's a significant improvement, and I'm sure your husband is relieved too. So with that, we shall say good night or farewell, and wish you a very good night's sleep or a very good day wherever you may be.